Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have our first team report from Portland Regionals, and I am joined by a top player. I am joined by Kalen. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Audie?
I'm doing great. It's great to be back. It's great to have some team reports on the channel, and we have got a spicy team from you that you piloted to a top 16 finish at Portland. But first, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kalen Brown. I'm a relatively new player to the scene. This is my first full season, and I'm pushing for the world's invite. I'm getting pretty close. I'm at 230 out of 300, so we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, and you had I know we met at the Austin local a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago, and you actually won that tournament and with the Brightpowder Tatsugiri, and I was like, oh, this is just a team that you're memeing with. You bring it to a local, it's all fun, and then here you
Mhm.
are on I saw you on stream at Portland with the very similar team. And you got all the way to top 16 of this tournament with Bright Powder
Yeah.
Tatsugiri. So crazy idea. Talk to me about how you built the team and why you decided to run this sort of core.
Sure. So I have been running versions of Dondozo throughout the season because I am a Dynamax baby, and it feels like the closest thing to it. So it felt immediately like the most comfortable kind of core in Series 1. And I've just kind of been doing well with it and changing stuff. And so I, I've just been running with it. And then after your team report with Nails from Fort Wayne, with his solo Dondozo, I had been I was a little bit inspired because I have been trying to, or I've been saying for a while that the best way to run Dondozo is to like be able to use it without Tatsugiri and just like not go into the boosts ever. Um, and that's how it has always felt to me is like if you are able to not do it and just have the pressure of threatening boost at all times, it's a lot scarier than when you're actually boosted. Because basically the player has to guess whether or not they have to cover for more options every single turn. As soon as you have committed to going into the commander mode, it's like okay, now I have my game plan and I know what to do. But before then, they have to cover like okay, is he going to switch there? Am I allowed to target this slot next to it? And so I felt like finding a really good way to use Dondozo when it's not in the boosts was super important for a good Dondozo team. And so that was sort of where that started. And I was like, what if I could use Nails' team, but like with the Tatsugiri somewhere in it? And I messed around with it, and the composition didn't really work, and it didn't make sense. And then after EUIC and all of the Palafin stuff did really well, I was like, you know what sucks about Palafin is you have to switch it out to get like your really good strong wave crashes, and you can't threaten a lot of damage on turn one. What if you just had a Dondozo instead of a Palafin, and we can Catfish as Palance, and basically we have our whole normal Palance core, but occasionally if you can just go into a commander boost on turn one, and they have no way of knowing whether or not you're going to do it. So it's you have the more immediate threat than you get with Palafin. And Dondozo is just a really good bulky water type. It does amazing without being in the boosts. So yeah, that was the general idea of the team, and we tried a few versions. But my idea of like a Palance core is Amoonguss, Arcanine, Fluttermane, Palafin, and then like your big stat stick and your like filler mon, which is just whatever it's going to be, whether it's an Iron Hands or a Tatsugiri. They
Mhm.
kind of so that was kind of the idea. I messed around with a bunch of stuff. I had originally had an Iron Hands over the as my stat stick slot, um, but I felt like I didn't have enough pressure into Amoonguss, and also it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be into the Palance quote mirror. And we ended up switching to Baxcalibur, and it worked amazing. And Howl is just so good with Baxcalibur and Dondozo. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the premise of the team. Is I use it basically like a Palance core, and until I have shown all four of my Mons, they just have to be terrified that at any moment I could turn into a Dondozo team
Mhm.
while I'm playing as a Palance core.
Yeah, that's a really cool concept. And Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. There's been a lot of discourse about whether Palafin is how good Palafin really is on like Twitter and
It's amazing.
whatnot. You know, I think this is
Okay.
because of Moxie boosted. He said something
Yeah.
about what's up.
Oh, I was just saying it's so good. Like,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I don't
absolutely.
understand the discourse. Elephant is insane.
This is it. I blame Moxie boosted. He was saying, Gyarados is better, and I don't know about that, but it did have more slots in day two of Portland. Talked about that on Top Takes a little bit. Dondozo is also a stat stick, and unlike Gyarados, it does have Wave Crash, so it does actually get to do damage even when it's not in Commander, like you said. And so I
Right.
totally agree. We've seen in the GCs, we've seen non Commander Tatsugiris with Dindozos. Again, Dindozo is just like a real Pokemon on those teams.
Yeah.
It's not just a Catfish, right? So it does
Yep.
get to do real stuff, and it's really cool to see you take that to the extreme and say I'm going to straight up replace a Palafin with it, and but also have that really powerful Dindozo mode that is oh so scary to face against and requires you to bring certain mons against. I think every single time, even though you don't have to go into it. So I think that's
Yeah,
really
you
cool.
really force leads.
And
So
every team, yeah, I just feel like every team has their Dindozo mode where they have to bring the four Pokemon against Dindozo, and this is just so
exactly.
this disrupts it so much. So this is really cool. Talk to me about the individual Pokemon and why they are trained the way they are.
Sure. So starting with Dondozo, I felt like I think the move set is really unstandard. All of it's not super common. Mostly you see Dondozo as just like leftovers and really stally because they want to like really like get the most out of their boosts. But I don't think this team needs to do that, and I think it makes it way worse on its own when it's not boosted. So I went with Oblivious because uh, it just makes it an even better version of Palafin. Like you into the like specifically into the mirror, you just can't get Intimidate cycled. They can't immediately pressure you with status because you have Lumberry, and a lot of teams have been dropping Haze and adding Clear Smog. Uh, I can talk about it later, but that like made the matchup in against top eight Caleb Breyer just completely unwinnable for him. It was like 70 or 80% in my favor. I barely had to play my set against him um, because I was oblivious to entire steal. Um, Wave Crash is obviously the most important move on Dondozo. Rock Slide was insane, and I had my speed specifically so I could outspeed Garchomp, but also I wanted speed on it so that I would be able to get actual like use out of Rock Slide flinches because outspeeding stuff is important. Uh, I don't know if I needed to outspeed Garchomp, but outspeeding Chiyu was really important. And if you're going that fast, you might as well just get the extra couple and outspeed Garchomp as well. I have enough attack to KO Amoonguss with Rock Slide into Terra Steel Heavy Slam when I'm at +2 attack. And it also is enough attack that at +3 you should be able to one shot with Terra Steel Heavy Slam, unless they're crazy bulky and it's a roll. But like the normal Picolytics spread, you get the one shot on. And that's also why Heavy Slam is really good. Is just being able to hit grass types is really important. Sometimes you want a really strong move that you don't have to take recoil from. One-shotting Flutter Mane without being boosted is really nice. So it's just like one of the biggest damage options you can get. Dondo's is pretty heavy, so it is very surprising what you hit for 120 base power. Uh, Amoonguss is basically a normal Amoonguss. I speed crept the 4 speed Amoonguss so that I just knew I would always be the fastest Amoonguss. And I have Clear Smog because opposing Dondozo is really, really hard and annoying when you are not unaware. Um, so Amoonguss is basically my big Dondozo check. And then I'm just normal Amoonguss otherwise, except for the Terra Fairy. Terra Fairy was specifically because it's actually because playing against you at the local, you were running Palance with the King Gambit core,
Hmm.
and it was like Sword Stance King Gambit, and Sword Stance steel or boosting steel types plus a redirector is, I think, the hardest matchup for this team. Aside from apparently Screamtail, which I didn't realize until I was on stream against Navjeet, but we can get to that later. So Terra Fairy felt really important for the King Gambit because they are all dropping Iron Head, and or at least on that specific version. If it's not that specific version with the Swords Dance, then it's super easy and it doesn't matter. But a redirector plus the Swords Dance and Terra Dark just kind of one-shots everything on the team. So it just gives me a little bit of extra room. And this is specifically for the Lum version. If they're not Lum, then I just spore them and it's fine and it's easy. Arcanine is... I kind of took some of this idea from Nails' Palance core spread. I am safety goggles, so I felt like Terra Water was just a better defensive typing. And I have just enough defense to live a +1 Terra Dark Kowtow Cleave from King Gambit, so that I can feel comfortable leading Arcanine against King Gambit and not worry about giving it the boosts, because the game plan into that is just howling your Dondozo up. So it's important to be able to lead Arcanine. But otherwise, it's a pretty standard set. No Protect. All of the moves were really important. Every single one put in work. This Arcanine is a absolute beast, and it's so tanky and bulky, and I love it. The 12 attack just makes sure that at +1 you can one-shot a Amoonguss. Baxcalibur was insane. It's a ridiculously good mon. I don't have a lot of attack. I didn't really feel like I needed it. I felt like the speed was really nice. I wanted to be exactly one speed slower than my Arcanine. I think I hit 135 and then 134. So Baxcalibur is 134. And that outspeeds all Adamant Dragonite. Because I was seeing on ladder a couple Choice Banded Dragonite with Dragon Claw, and I didn't want to deal with being slower than them. I ended up, all of the Dragonite that I faced that were Choice Banded were just Jolly, so I didn't realize that was popping up as much. So it didn't matter. But the speed also speed crept a lot of Palafin, and that was also really nice because I would be at like +1 or +2 attack on my Baxcalibur, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'll just haze them," and then I outspeed and Glaive Rush and one-shot their Palafin, which was pretty nice. That got me some surprise KOs throughout the tournament. And the attack is just enough so that at +1, Icicle Spear one-shots Tinglet. And I also live a Specs Dazzling Gleam, which was what the Spit F was for. This Fluttermane spread was insane. I am just fast enough to outspeed all modest Fluttermane, which most are, unless they're Sash or Speed Booster, which I can tell like from looking at the team sheet or as soon as they're on the field. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I've never been surprised by the speed interactions on Fluttermane, which is super nice information to be able to just bank on. And then I felt like the team was so physically bulky with Arcanine and Dondozo and Amoonguss that I really wanted Fluttermane to just be a special tank. And so I am max HP, and then the 12 defense is just enough to live an Ice Spinner or Sucker Punch from Chien-Pao guaranteed. And then the rest is in special attack, and it did enough damage because of Terra Fairy. And Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam is just nuts. Shadow Ball Moonblast Dazzling Gleam is really, really good. And then the fourth move was kind of like, I click Dazzling Gleam 95% of the time anyways, and so I don't really need a fourth move. I never want to be locked into Thunderbolt because it's only good for the one turn that you use it, and then you have to switch out. And I have Spore and Spore and Wisp, and so Hex is sort of my Dondozo game plan because I want to status the Dondozo. So Hex does really well into it. I ended up, it came up that I was able to just very cleanly one-shot a Dondozo at neutral when it was asleep, so that I could like hex and then spore, and it just made the game plan super easy. And then probably my most crazy spread and set overall is this Tatsugiri. I am like no speed Tatsugiri, modest so that I do enough damage, um, and then just really, really, really bulky. And the reason I was doing that is uh, I really wanted to leverage the fact that this thing is a freaking water dragon type, which is like one of the best defensive typings that exists. And this thing kind of has stats. Like it's not that bad, especially when you're investing in bulk. Uh, it's really surprisingly strong. It has the same special attack stat as Hydreigon, so you're getting hit by essentially Hydreigon Draco meteors, and then Muddy Water is a ridiculous move. And I tried a bunch of items. I was leftovers at one point. I was Sash. The Sash never came up because of the way I was using it and positioning it. It would have come up in the tournament like once or twice, but it never would have won me a set. Um, and so I was I kind of threw this on a Tatsugiri for the GC as like this will be funny, and then it was insane. It was so good because you're so bulky that you're just spamming Muddy Waters in the end game, and so things are getting act drops, and then it's just like an extra added on uh, accuracy thing. So it turns this Tatsugiri so bulky, and it was insane. So Muddy Water Draco Meteor and Protect were really important. And then the last move was kind of a flex for a while. I was like sub lefties at one point. I was nasty plot at one point. And then the thing that I really disliked the most about Tatsugiri is that in end games you could just like miss 3 Muddy Waters in a row and lose. It's really high variance. Sometimes it's really high variance in your favor. Sometimes it's really high variance in your opponent's favor. And so having a consistent move to just like get the extra damage that you need with Helping Hand is really nice. So that like I had a lot of end games where it's like, okay, cool, Helping Hand, Terra Fairy Gleam just gets these last 2 KOs, and it's super simple. I don't have to deal with like Dazzling Gleam and hitting Muddy Water, because if I miss the Muddy Water, then something bad happens. So it just made things really clean. And yeah, I think we may have had specific calcs in mind with the Tatsugiri when we were building, but I don't remember anything particular. It was like we ended up very easily hitting all of the big ones that we were going to hit, and then there were the ones that we weren't going to hit, we were never going to get there. So it was like, okay, we hit the special attack bump, and we just want my biggest thing was I wanted to be able to kill Iron Bundle with Draco Meteor, which does not take very much. I think you just do it if you're modest. So yeah, and then the rest was just bulk. So
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I can attest to that Tatsugiri being terrifying to play against. I think I did hit my -1 accuracy spore into you at the local and won the set because of it, but that's just that's just a terrifying position to be in. So I'm sure that you struck fear into the hearts of a lot of your opponents. How many moves did your Tatsugiri end up dodging over the course of your tournament?
throughout the tournament, it it dodged like probably 6 or 7 moves. I think it only dodged one. No, it dodged 2 100% accurate moves. Both were essential in. No, one of them was essential in me winning the set. The other was like I probably would have won either way. But it was funny. In my win and in against Geo, he had the first 2 sets, or the first 2 games. Every time he killed my Dondozo, his Choice Band Terror Blast Dragonite one-shot my Tatsugiri as it got spit out from the Dondozo. And then in the 3rd game, he missed the Terror Blast. It wouldn't have made any difference in the end game because I had Fluttermane in the back that outsped both of his mons and one-shot them with Dazzling Gleam. But it was still very funny. and then the other one was against actually our other local, Austin Acosta, in round 12 of day, so round 3 of day 2. And he, like, we actually practiced a lot in the matchup, and he severely outled me game 1. And basically my only out was his Dondozo missed one of its 2 earthquakes onto my Tatsugiri, and it missed one of them, and that gave me enough leeway to kill his Dondozo and then reverse sweep him.
Austin
So
would be the person who loses to the Brightpowder.
it
I
really
know,
would be him.
like, you talk to him, he'll tell you about how he lost to Fissure twice in series 2.
Yeah.
So quick claw Fissure twice. Yeah, that of course. But I mean, it's 10%, right? And it seems like it came up about that
Bro,
often.
was like, yep. It was really what it was mostly nice for was the already inaccurate moves, because it's like if I get a muddy water act drop, then it's just like things really start to spiral and go in my way. And a lot of the time, just one miss is enough.
Yeah, really cool idea. And so you mentioned this is, sort of a Palance team, but you replaced the Dozo with Palafin. Talk to me about how you actually played the team. Do you have like a bunch of planned out lines, or is it kind of just figured out as you go?
This team is really flexible and forgiving. It feels like there's a really high skill ceiling with it, but I also think there's a pretty reasonable skill floor. I don't think you can just like this is not a normal Dondozo team where you can just like haha go into the boost and just click attacks. I think you have to really think out some of your lines. I would say I probably brought Dondozo and Tatsugiri together like 50 to 60% of the time. But I brought Dondozo to almost every game. It's just really good. So it really depends what other teams have. It's like, does this team have an immediate Dondozo answer? If no, probably you want to play towards the boosted mode like at least once, if not twice. Like so, for example, in my game against Caleb Breyer or Cable VGC, he was basically running Agati's team, and he had taunt on the Palafin over sub, and then his only like major Dondozo answer was clear smog on his Amoonguss, and I was like, the only thing he can do against my Dondozo is hit a Fissure, so I am just going to go into those modes. And he didn't bring Ting-Lu game 1, and he found out very quickly that he needed to bring Ting-Lu game 1 because, like, I think I led Dondozo and Arcanine, and I discovered that his Arcanine and Baxcalibur were both even faster than mine. And he Howl Glaive Rushed my Arcanine as I tried to give my Dondozo a Howl boost and protect. And he one-shot my Arcanine. And then I was like, okay, he can't do that again because I'm threatening boosting and rock sliding, which will guaranteed hit because he just Glaive Rushed and one-shot his Baxcalibur. So I brought in my Baxcalibur, and I was like, well, he definitely won't do that again. And then he did it again, and one-shot my Baxcalibur. And I was like, okay, well, now I just have Dondozo. And so I boosted into Tatsugiri and Terra Steeled, and then reverse swept him, and he couldn't break the Dondozo at all. And then game 2, he led Ting-Lu, and so I led Dondozo and Amoonguss. And I was like, I just need to dodge one, and I'll Spore him. And he hit the Fissure turn 1, but I got the Spore off and killed his Arcanine. And then because I got lucky because his Ting-Lu took all 3 turns of sleep, and that was all I needed for Baxcalibur and Baxcalibur and Tatsugiri to just like kind of helping hand and destroy the other slot. And so,
Yeah.
but so there are certain things like that where it's like, if you identify there's like really no answer to one of the things, it's like, okay, we'll just spam that thing. But you have to really know how to like read the team sheets because like open team sheet helps this team so much. If this was not good for the GC, it was really bad in closed team sheet. I did by far the worst in the GC with this team than with any of my other teams, because knowing all of your opponent's options makes you be able to build like really smart game plans. So it's really flexible. How you can just like sit there and just howl your Dondozo up a bunch, and then if your Dondozo goes down, just howl your Baxcalibur up a bunch, and then just use it like a normal Palance team, but with like Dondozo, Amoonguss, Arcanine, Baxcalibur, or Fluttermane. Um, a lot of teams don't have answers to like redirect plus Terra Fairy, Dazzling Gleam. Um, so it just I think the most important skill for me this tournament was being able to like read team sheets and figure out like how people had to play into me and just punishing them for that.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's definitely a very flexible team, and so relying on the strength seems really valuable. Was there any Pokemon or matchups where you felt like you had to play in a very specific way against people should know when they're trying out this team?
Yeah, I don't think you can against most Palance teams. I don't think you can really spam the Dondozo mode. I usually don't bring Tatsugiri unless their only answer is Clear Smog. Um, I think against like some of the weakest matchups I was talking about was a boosting steel type plus a redirector. So Mousehold Goldengo was really tough for me. My round one was against Brandon Tudenhagen, who ended up actually getting 13th, which is one place below me with his Mousehold Goldengo team, and that was a nightmare. And I just had to like make every call right, and I did for one game and not the other two. Um, it's just like uh, game plans into that was like kill things with flutter, but don't make it rain. So you have to position really carefully. Um, boost it like it is really safe for him to just like Terra Water and Nasty Plot and protect his Mousehold on turn one, and to punish because to punish that you have to like Terra Fairy Moonblast his Goldengo, which is kind of really hard to do.
Hmm.
Um, and you really want to switch out your Fluttermane because you can't tear away from it, tear away from Make It Rain. So into stuff like that, it's just like knowing what your opponent has to do. Like I think the way I won my one game against him was just really hard calling a protect that he had to make. So I think I needed to Terra Fairy Moonblast his Goldengo as he terrored it and protected the other slot. And I got the call right, and it won me that game. And then I didn't get to do that again the rest of the game, or the rest of the other two games. And uh, Earthquake would help that matchup a lot, but I don't know what I would put it over. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Into a lot of the balance stuff, it's really just like Rock Slide. It's so good. Um, you outspeed a lot of stuff, you outbulk a lot of stuff, and you're doing really good damage at +2. So like Qianpo Dragonite, Rockslide Dondozo just obliterates. It's really good into Chiyu and Bundle. So like a lot of the balance teams, this stuff like this core just does really really well. I usually can lead Arcanine and Dondozo and just howl and protect, and then just start rock sliding or howl and rock slide depending on how threatened you feel with damage. And then uh, yeah, it really can play like a normal Palance team that you don't have to immediately switch out of. So and Dondozo is just a little bit, at least more defensively bulky than Palafin. 150 base HP is a lot. So
Yeah.
um, what other major stuff is there? Yeah, like the balance stuff with like Gyarados, Chiyu, Amoonguss, Fluttermane, Bundle, that kind of stuff. Um, it is generally just like lead Fluttermane and Dondozo, and this Fluttermane is so specially bulky. I took an Icy Wind into Overheat from Bundle and Chiyu, uh, and then just Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleamed and killed the Bundle and brought the Chiyu down to Sash. And it was just like, okay, I win now because now I can so I protected my Dondozo, and then you can just like boost and kill everything.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, this team is just really bulky, which makes it pretty forgiving. If you get a turn wrong, you usually don't die. I very rarely had Amon one shot on a turn, and Amoonguss just gives infinite health to things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that there's no like one game plan into any team.
Hmm.
Uh, the other big one where there is kind of a game plan is against opposing Dondozo. If they're oblivious, then you can play a lot more flexibly. But if they're unaware, you almost aren't allowed to bring Dondozo at all because your Dondozo just gets destroyed by theirs. Especially since I'm Terra Steel and they all have Earthquake, so I can't Terra out of weaknesses, and they are all Terra Grass, and Rockslide is not doing very much to a boosted unaware Dondozo.
Hmm.
So I usually just bring the bottom four and get a Wisp off, get a Clear Smog off, because none of them are Terra Steel other than mine, or next to none. And then if you do force them to Terra Grass with the Amoonguss, then Baxcalibur does really well. If whether or not they're Wisps or Spored, Hex does a lot. Um, you can one shot a neutral Dondozo with Hex, and so Hex into Spore, so you Spore the Tatsugiri is pretty consistent. Or if you, depending on how you're positioned, Hex into Glaive Rush, whatever. Uh, Baxcalibur is a really good stick, hence the nickname. Uh, you just put it out there, and Dondozo can't really kill it at +2, which is really nice. And it's usually not at +2 with Arcanine because you either Wisp them um, or Intimidate cycle them, depending on their Terra type.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, interestingly enough, against Austin Acosta, his Dondozo was unaware, and I actually brought Dondozo in both of my games. I brought it in the first game because I knew that, or I thought he wouldn't bring it because we actually practiced the matchup a lot before the tournament, and I told him I wasn't allowed to bring Dondozo, and he also was like, I shouldn't bring Dondozo, and I was like, okay, so I'm going to bring Dondozo because in most of our matchups we didn't, and we both brought it, and so I got lucked out the first game with the Brightpowder miss, and then my game plan, game two, was actually to just beat him with 3 Mons, and force him into the Dondozo mode so that I can set up to reverse sweep as he comes out of the Dondozo mode. So I basically, uh, yeah, I led Dondozo, forced him to Terra, and switched to his own boosts. And then I was like, it's fine. I don't need to do any damage. So my Dondozo was only to force him to play a certain way. And it didn't do any damage or get anything done other than immediately force him into the boost so that Fluttermane, Amoonguss, and Tatsugiri could clean up everything else by like putting the Tatsugiri to sleep so that he couldn't really position correctly.
Hmm. Yeah.
And helping hand Gleam is crazy. So
That makes sense. That is a great segue into talking about your tournament run. You've alluded
yeah,
to a couple of the sets, but you went 10-4 overall and had the highest resistance of all the 10-4s. So you had a really stacked schedule. Talk to me about a few notable games from your tournament run.
sure. So I started 0-2 and then made the run back all the way to 10-2. And then I lost my last 2 games. So my day 2 specifically was crazy. I mean, that's where my resistance is from. 3 of my 5 opponents made top 8, and the other 2 made top 4. So I played Caleb Breyer, Navjeet Joshi, and Lenduel. And then my other 2 opponents on that day were Randy Qua and Austin Acosta, who also ended with a 10-4 record, which was the same as me. So my resistance was insane. My day 2 was so hard. But I just like severely matchup checked Caleb. We already talked about that. My game against Randy was really tough. Um, I thought he was going to bring a zoom roll because I thought that was a bigger issue. He never brought it, luckily. But his Amoonguss was super, super bulky, and he was really kind of punishing me for my Lumberry, and he would lead Amoonguss and Arcanine and then just Wisp Spore into my Dondozo. And yeah, he was just I couldn't really break through his Terra Water Tinglu with my Dondozo, and he just ended up being able to put me to sleep and then force me to Terra, and then if I Terra'd, then he was doing too much damage to me, and it forced me to Terra with Clear Smog. Um, so I did like I think I outplayed him a little bit game one, and then game two, I led Arcanine and Dondozo, and he led Arcanine and Amoonguss, and he just spored into my Dondozo as I protected and howled, and then I, knowing my calcs, was like, aha, a +3 heavy slam kills Amoonguss, and then I don't have to deal with this, and if I'm at +3, I don't care that I'm wisped. Uh, so he can just like I'll if I kill the Amoonguss, I win. And then it lived on like 6 HP, and then I got put to sleep and just kind of immediately lost the game. And then game three, uh, it was really close, and I think I misplayed in the beginning, and I got forced into the boosts, and I ended up just getting really lucky with rock slide flinches, which happens. Um, if you're clicking rock slide enough, you're gonna get lucky with, or you're gonna get flinches.
Mhm.
But he really just didn't play the last game. I think I flinched his Arcanine like 4 turns in a row or something like that, and he just wasn't able to rotate around enough. And once you lose one Mon against a boosted Dondozo, you kind of can't play.
Mhm.
So it just kind of spiraled from there. But yeah, I felt a little bad about hacking him out because he's a really good player, and I look up to him a lot. But he wasn't upset about it at all. So that's the game.
Yeah.
It's bound to happen. And then my probably most infamous game on stream against Navjeet. There's actually a clip of me getting the team sheet and looking at it and just going, oh, like I instantly saw this and I was like, oh, I'm doomed. This was a nightmare matchup. Sash Bundle is really hard with Amoonguss, with Chiyu, with Screamtail. I don't know how I was supposed to approach this. I have a few ideas, but like Screamtail really doesn't let you play. So yeah, you can go watch this match back on stream. It was pretty funny. It was very quick. I think I played out of my mind game one, and basically my outs were a Heat Wave miss or a Moonblast crit. And then game two, I just got calls wrong and got super rolled really quickly in like 3 turns or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Navjeet's crazy good, and this team was so cool. So I don't feel bad about it at all. I didn't think about my Screamtail matchup until I got his team sheet, and I was like, oh no, I forgot this was a Pokemon. Uh,
Yeah.
I think having Encore and Disable, like one is fine. I can play around it, and I think it would be really easy if it was just one. Having both made it like impossible because he could just protect on my Flutter Mane, and then my Flutter Mane can't do anything because I have to switch out and respect Disable. I can't really boost because then I'm just struggling. I think I was maybe supposed to just like howl like 4 times and then boost and then just hit some +6 struggles. I think that might have worked, but that's kind of an insane line to come up with. So I don't know.
Yeah, definitely seems like a very, very difficult matchup for your team. And yeah, you can see that match on stream. It was not the most competitive set, but
No.
you gave yourself a fighting shot game one, which is about all you can ask for in a negative matchup.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Other than that, like I was just really happy to be playing against so many top players, and it's awesome that so many of my opponents did really well. Of my of my 4 losses, 3 of them were top 16, and then the other was a friend that I prepped with a bunch before the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and is in my team building group. So it's like I don't feel bad at all about my record and who I lost to. Everyone was so good.
Yeah,
This felt like a pretty tough schedule for me. So
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just a really, really impressive run with a really, really cool take. You called it Catfish Palance, which I love that name.
yeah.
I was laughing really hard at the local when you said that.
Hmm.
And so I definitely recommend that you try this team out. The paste will be in the description, and the rental code is on screen right now. So yeah. And those are all the questions that I had. Did you have any final words or shoutouts?
Yeah, I wanted to shout out everyone from my VGC group, the Monastery. So my biggest help building this team was Scott Iwafuchi, who ended 10th place in the tournament. He's been one of my biggest friends and partners in team building and practicing throughout the season. Um, I came to the tournament with Zach and Ben Immersion and Dimitri and then also shout outs to Hayden and Devin, who have both been really great friends and helped with practicing and building this team. Uh, all of them have been really supporting uh, as I have been pushing for my rewards invite. And so, yeah. Oh, I also forgot Mitchell from the server. And yeah, everyone has been amazing. I don't think I would be able to be here without the monastery. That's they've all been doing so well. Everyone who went to the tournament got points, and Scott and I both got top 16, which was really cool. So
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your really incredible performance, and thank you so much for coming on the channel. Really appreciate it,
yeah,
and sharing this super cool team with everyone. Um, and yeah, thank you all for watching, and until next time, I will see you all later.